everyone, and welcome to another episode of Theater Makers Interviews. This week, my guest is Mr. Stefan Benoit, actor, director, trained ballet dancer, and educator. So I'll start with the beginning. What was your first theatrical experience?
In kindergarten, I was the person who wakes up and sees Santa Claus in the classroom production of A Visit from St. Nicholas. And then in first grade, I was St. Patrick, and St. Patrick runs the snakes out of Ireland. So that's probably my first tastes, I suppose.
All right. And what is it that made you fall in love with theater and with performing?
The feedback, we hopped all over the globe as a kid, and Dad was quite busy, and Mom was quite busy, and so often we were left to our own devices, and it was nice to get positive feedback from people, and without having to interact with them. They were out there and I was up on the stage, and there was this line of demarcation where the very shy Steve Benoit didn't have to understand that. Oh, my computer is acting weird. Where I didn't have to interact one-on-one with a lot of people, which makes me nervous, has since I was a kid.
So some questions for you as a director.
All right.
What was your first directing? Did I say director or actor?
Director.
I did say director.
Yeah.
What was your first directing job?
When I was in high school, we had an acting and directing class. It was one of those easy A type classes, but actually the teacher, Mike Davidson, taught us so much that we didn't realize we didn't know. And Saturday Night Live had just come out, which ages me. We're like, have you seen this show, Saturday Night Live? And the class eventually writing scripts, producing your own scripts, and we all had to take turns directing. So we did Saturday Night Live sketches in class that we would write ourselves and take turns directing. So I think that was probably my first entry into directing, and we ended up creating our own little comedy troupe that we called the Pokes Dopes, and that's what we did. Is we just had a lot of fun doing that.
And what was the first large stage production that you directed?
Let's see, large stage production that I directed. I would say when I was a large stage production, I would say would be 12 Angry Jurors.
Okay.
I was assistant directing that under Miles Turner when I was student teaching.
Okay.
And so it was just one of those things where I had worked with Miles before. We had done some plays together, but directing was something that I was kind of familiar with, but only like 5-minute sketches. So doing a large show like that was a whole nother ball of wax, and I learned a lot from Miles. I owe a lot of gratitude to him for teaching me a lot of things that, again, I didn't know that I didn't know.
Now, did you, the first time that it had your name as the director, was that after that at a high school? Let's
see. Yeah, that was at Crescent Iroquois High School. They had not had a theater production before. Or a drama club or anything, and they had seen my resume and all the stuff that I had done, my stand-up and the television show and stuff like that. And so they said, we want you to start a drama club and do some theater productions. I was like, okay. So starting out slow, because these kids, I didn't know the kids very well, and they didn't know how to put together a show. We did one play that I had written for Madcaps eons ago. That was called Days of Our Nights, which was kind of a King Arthur ripoff. And then we also did it with storybook theater, and it was a modern day telling of Cinderella, and we bookended those two together. and we had 2 separate casts, and that way we could actually get a feel for how the kids were going to react and put a show together. And after that, we did 2 shows a year while I was there.
Okay. Now, of all those shows, with any of them, the first time that you were sort of put in charge, what scared you the most about going into it?
Choreography.
Okay.
I could make a set. I could teach kids to act, but teaching kids to sing and dance was definitely not in my wheelhouse. So we really didn't do a whole lot of that when I was at Crescent Iroquois. But when I ended up going to Moments High School a couple of years later, and we did the damn Yankees, I had the wonderfully talented Rick Daggett doing the music, and we together managed to plunk out some choreography, and we got the school dance team to help us with that as well.
Okay. And what did you learn most about your first times directing?
Set defined deadlines, set defined schedules. Don't just say, oh, I think we'll work on Act 2 tomorrow. Never think no, and make sure those kids know 2 or 3 weeks in advance it's on the schedule, because, you know, especially if you're starting out with a fledgling drama group like I had, they didn't know what to expect. And so you're literally starting from the ground up. So that's kind of where it is. The more organized you are at the beginning, the better off you'll be at the end. That's all stuff that I found out, and I was able to put down in words when I was doing my master's project.
Okay.
You had to do a master's. From my master's degree, I had to do a project, and so my cooperating teacher suggested that I create, it was for English, an English degree, the master's degree, and the project was creating a workbook for first-time high school directors of shows, because a lot of times they're kind of thrown into those with situations without knowing what to do,
Right.
especially in smaller schools. And so it was basically a workbook, and I documented my my entire voyage of doing Guys and Dolls, from designing the sets to casting the shows, setting the schedules, doing the budget and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So that it worked out nicely, and I submitted that. It was like 50 some odd pages in the workbook, and the show. And I came out with more letters behind my name, so I can't complain too much.
Right. So what advice did you get before you started and took on directing?
What advice did I get?
Did you get any advice?
Oh, yeah. I'm sure Miles gave me tons and tons of advice, and probably half of it I have forgotten or have just ingrained and not sure what it was that he told me. But it was probably, for kids, over-rehearsing will build confidence, but you don't want to rehearse so much that they fall asleep during the show. Some kids will claim that they know their lines, and they don't. I guess line rehearsals is probably one of the things that he stressed the most, as well as rhythm. Every show has a rhythm, and it depends. Sometimes it speeds up, sometimes it slows down. And in a couple of shows that I did with Miles, he would bring out a metronome. And if he wanted to build up that pace a little bit more, make it a little more tense, he'd speed up the metronome. And if he wanted to slow it down a little bit, he'd slow down the metronome. So I took that on as well, and it works. It works really well.
All right. So is there a show that you have directed in the past that you would love to revisit and maybe do in a different way?
I would love, one of my favorite shows to direct has been Scapino. I was in it in high school, but in the same respect, I've directed it a number of times, and it's really cool, especially if you get kids that are willing to throw in their bits, because I'd like to think that I give them an opportunity to be creative. So it's not just say the lines and stand here, then move here, then move here. That's the sign of a rookie director. I think what you do is you try to get them involved in the process and say, what do you think your character will do? And let them think the character through and get their creative juices flowing so that they can see that it's a cooperative process.
Okay. So what has been the hardest decision that you have had to make as a director for the good of everyone involved in the production?
When to let a kid go, when the kid wasn't holding his own. And it's hard because, the kid thinks he's doing well, but then he doesn't show up. And he's, I'm like, is he calling my bluff or what? Because
right.
I got to think of the show first. So I'd say that was probably one of the hard things. I've had some kids have to drop out for whatever reasons. I'd say one of the freakiest ones, it was not a show that I was in, but it happened to someone else that I know. And the parent called. They had the show on Friday night. The parent called on Saturday and said, my daughter's in a play? And the director said, yes. He says, well, hey, we're Seventh-day Adventists. She will not be there for tonight's performance. And it was just like, what do you do then?
Wow.
So the director turned to his daughter and said, I need you to learn these lines by tonight. And she rose to the occasion. It wasn't a lead role, but it was still a crucial role. But she had to learn that part and fit into that kid's costume and do it. So that was always one of the
right.
What if that happens to me? I mean, to me that's worst case scenario. And that, like I said, that didn't happen to me, but it happened to someone else that I know, and that's what I've always been concerned about. Yeah. I've had kids come and tell me that something has happened. They've ended up with a medical situation, and they were going to have to drop out of the show. And what are you going to do? Kids are going to be kids, and they're still learning these things. And sometimes you're going to have to let them. You're going to have to let them make those decisions, and make the decisions that's right for them. So.
Right. Yeah. So, what do you look for when you watch people audition for you?
First off, volume. They might be a great actor, but this isn't television. They need to be able to project. And if they're having a hard time projecting, I'll ask them. I'll usually stop people halfway through their audition process and give them some type of direction to see if they can follow the direction or if they will follow the direction. And if they do, that's a good sign that they'll be able to work with the group. But yeah, volume is a big thing. Animation is a big thing because a lot of my shows are comedies and big on animation and big. I've always said, speak up louder. I've rarely ever had to tell a kid to tone down.
Mm-hmm.
Or, so I would say those are the things. They don't know how free they can get, that the theater is going to let them explore those avenues.
Right. What has been your favorite production that you have directed?
Well, I've mentioned Scapino,
mm-hmm.
but I've always loved You Can't Take It With You.
Okay.
Again, and I thought it was interesting as we were doing Addams Family. The plot for the Addams Family is very much like the plot of You Can't Take It With You.
Yeah. Yeah.
Normal family, weird family, two are meeting. It's fireworks, and then they come together again. Very much the same thing. So I've always had that. I've always liked that that message. Fly your freak flag. And I'd like to think I'm fairly freaky as people go. So, and I like to fly my freak flag on a regular basis. So I like those. Those are two shows that I really wouldn't mind directing again. Scapino and You Can't Take It With You. I loved Arsenic and Old Lace too. That's a fun one.
Yeah.
So.
So some questions for you as an actor. What has been your favorite role that you have played?
Hands down, Uncle Fester. I think that I was born to play Uncle Fester. It was my favorite character when I would watch the show as a kid. And, you know, when I shaved my head, I thought, dang, one of these days I want to play Uncle Fester. And then I saw the show up in Chicago with Nathan Lane and Bebe Besh. Was that her name?
Bebe Neuwirth?
Bebe Neuwirth, that's it.
Yeah.
And
so you saw it before it went to Broadway.
Right. And they had, oh my gosh, they had an octopus in the show.
Yeah, well, yeah. That's why the show from Chicago to Broadway changed a lot. They changed a lot of the music, and the squid was still in the show on Broadway. When it went to the tour, they rewrote a lot, cut the squid, cut some songs that I absolutely loved, rewrote the story a little bit, and then that's what is put out for companies. So that's the production that we did. The main reason was they didn't feel that there was a strong enough conflict. Okay. Because the original on Broadway, she doesn't tell either parent that she's engaged. She doesn't tell Gomez. She doesn't tell either parent. They just know that she's hiding something. Okay. And then I read somewhere that the guy that wrote the book, who was married to Roger Rees before he died. He also wrote, I think he wrote Jersey Boys as well, wrote the book to that. Said he realized that probably in all of literature, that sort of thing, one of the strongest, most loving couples ever created are probably Gomez and Morticia.
Oh, absolutely.
And he went, that's what I didn't realize at the time, is the conflict has to be between them. Okay. And the only people he felt could put a conflict between them would be their own children. Oh, yeah. So that's why it changed for the tour, that she tells one but not the other. So yeah, I can't remember the original plot or anything like that. I was just looking at the characters, the sets, and just enjoying the heck out of it. And then when Fester flew across the stage, I was like, that's the part I want. Yeah. I'm going to play Fester one day. So. Is there a role that you feel at this point in your life has gotten away? It's never going to happen. I think playing the king in Pippin, Charlemagne in Pippin. I love Pippin. It's my favorite musical of all time. You know, I got to interview William Catt, who was in the touring thing, and instead of talking to him about Greatest American Hero, I talked to him about Pippin, and the whole tone of the interview changed real quick. And he was more interested in talking about Pippin, because when you answer a billion questions about Greatest American Hero. Right. So yeah, I really love Pippin. I love the message. I love the music. And I still have it on video with Ben Vereen is in there, and Cheetah Rivera, and William Catt. And it's just insanely good, and I'm thrilled with it. Yeah. I think it would be fun to play Charlemagne. And when I was younger, I'd think, well, Miles gets all those roles, so I probably would never get it. And if we did it now, I don't know, I might have a chance. Maybe. I think that role is still within your. Yeah. They've got a community theater. Well, they've got 2 community theaters here in Champaign-Urbana. So one of these days, maybe we'll explore those avenues then. But people just get nervous about Pippin for some reason, and now that people are well, they keep saying, well, you know, there's an orgy scene. No, there's not. Not if you change the choreography. So. Oh yeah, I've never looked at that song, and really, I actually have never looked at that song and thought of it that way. High schools do it now. You know, it's they kept on saying, because I kept on, when I was doing Grease and stuff, I thought we should do Pippin. Oh no, there's an orgy scene in there, and Yeah.
So,
If you can do Grease, you can do Pippin.
Yeah, that's true.
Is there a dream role that you have that you haven't yet played?
I don't know. I haven't put much thought to that. I've played some roles that I would love to revisit. But are there any shows, any roles? I don't know. I think Charlemagne. Charlemagne is the one that I would like to play. That would be a fun one. So, or direct it. If I can't play Charlemagne, I'd like to direct that show.
So what has been your greatest accomplishment as an actor?
Being able to go on stage and sing in front of an audience.
Okay.
I did it in high school once. And then I would say that I got more confident singing in front of an audience thanks to my friend Klaus Schuler. We did a KVT show called Peccadillos, which was like little smatterings of all these different shows.
Mm-hmm.
And there was this party scene, and so they suggested to Klaus and I, because of our statures, that we sit in this nightclub scene just dressed as the Blues Brothers. And we're like, okay. And so we started dressing up like the Blues Brothers in that scene, and we started doing things in sync and all kinds of stuff. Then there's this fight at the end, and we just had a lot of fun. Well, then we get a call from Bill Gertine.
Okay.
And it says, you and Klaus do the Blues Brothers, right? We want you to perform for the Spice of Life. And we're like, and Klaus said, you say yes, say yeah. And so I was like, okay, yeah, we'll do it. We're like, we had never performed
right.
as the Blues Brothers before. And I had rarely, if ever, sung in front of an audience solo before. I was in choir and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So we put together 2 numbers and performed the Spice of Life. And then from that, we started getting phone calls from people asking us to perform the Blues Brothers. And Klaus and I are looking at each other like, this is crazy. Yeah, okay, we'll have fun with doing this. So we did a lot of Blues Brothers around town. And then we get a phone call to perform at Ditka's. They had heard of our show, our act, and they said, our Blues Brothers act has broken contract in order to go and be the Bulls Brothers at wherever the Bulls played. And we need someone to fulfill the gigs on their contract. We're like, okay. They said, how much do you charge? And I turned to Klaus and I said, how much should we charge? They want to pay us money. He says, tell them $300. We're like, okay, $300 a performance. And they're like, okay. And then we hung up. We're just like, oh my gosh, we could have asked for more. They said 300 too quickly.
Yeah.
So, but we made $900 doing 3 performances at Ditka's. And then we got gigs doing it for Ed Verdoliak, if you remember him. He ran for mayor.
Okay.
And so we performed the Blues Brothers for him. And we knew what his chances were of winning. And we got the check, and it was written in pencil at the top, the number and stuff. So we cashed it real quick.
Yeah.
But it was kind of a crazy ride. And then from there, we got the call to tour the Soviet Union for 2 weeks. So, but Klaus's music ability and my goofiness ability, we were able to patch those 2 things together and make something that actually was a fun thing to do for a while.
Wow.
So and so I would say that I got most of my confidence singing on stage probably from working with Klaus as the Blues Brothers.
Okay. So you mentioned that there are roles that you would like to you'd love to revisit. Is there any ones in particular?
Benjamin Franklin was a hoot.
Okay.
I love the snot, and now that I look a little more like Franklin after losing some of that weight, I would love to revisit that as well. I had a lot of fun with Benjamin Franklin, and of course Fester. I could play Fester, all the way till the cows come home. Those were my two favorite roles, and I would love to revisit those roles again sometime.
Okay. What role has taught you the most as a person?
Wow. What role has taught me the most? I would say playing Scapino when I was in high school, in the sense that there is a scene in Scapino where Scapino has to have this conversation with like 5 or 6 different characters, but he's playing each of the characters. And so having to switch to those characters all the time and changing the voice, changing the tonality, changing the posture, changing the attitude and stuff was a real trick. And I had to realize that I didn't have to rush it. It didn't have to be fast, but there was timing. There was a pace, there was a tempo, and there was timing involved in something like that. But having to change all those characters was a bit of a workout, but it also taught me a lot about playing characters.
Okay. So I have seen you perform on stage in a few shows, some larger roles, some cameos where you just came in and just appeared, in 2 songs in each act. And
I got mooned every night.
But you always find a way to make them solid characters, even if, for example, in Rent, playing Mr. Gray, who has no lines, nothing to do, you find ways to make them different characters. What methods do you go to when you're trying to find those characters?
I read the part and try to put it in some kind of some kind of setting. And since I'm a movie addict, I think to myself, who would I cast? What actor would I cast in these roles? And then what would I say to them, or what would they do to make that role theirs?
Right.
And so, in a sense, I'm trying to emulate what others have done. It's like when I was doing Fester and I asked you, which version of Fester do you want? And you kept on saying, I want them all. You do what you want. And so I was like, okay. So I think that the Fester that I did was an amalgam of a couple of them and then a little bit of myself. So yeah, I kind of think, what would I want out of this if I were directing, or if I was watching this on stage or watching it as a movie? So
now, do you think that, like you're saying, who would you cast? Do you ever think beyond that of who does this character, when you read it, remind you of another character, and I'm going to do my take on that person? And I ask that in the sense of, like, the 2 times that I played Nicely in Guys and Dolls, I just had this in my mind that I wanted him to be a man-child. So I kept thinking of Baby Huey, which, of course, most people my age are like, I don't know who that is, but of course I know things that happened before I was born.
Right.
And I just kept thinking, that's what I want. I want it to be that man-child that just is sweet, naive, but just happens to be an adult. Baby Huey or Abner, that sort of, those kind of cartoon characters. Have you looked at characters like that where you thought, oh, this person, this is this guy?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I go back to Fester, and again, there's Pee Wee Herman in there.
Okay.
When you say man-child, I think of Fester, because he embraces what he wants to do. He likes to do all this goofy stuff, and so yeah, I think of characters, I think of actors, I think of things like that. Like for Ben Franklin, I thought, what if Mr. Spock were a lech? What if he were a dirty old man? So because he had all this wisdom,
right,
to pull himself. I also thought there was a lot of what was his name? Tom Hulcha? or something who played Amadeus in the Amadeus movie. Kind of full of himself, but enjoyed life. So I think that there was a bit of that Amadeus in my Ben Franklin as well.
You know, you said that, and the first thing I thought of was who Ben Franklin, not him, but the way that at least he's written in that musical, that the way he speaks reminds me of, and I feel like you'll appreciate that. He reminds me of almost the Riddler, and the fact that he doesn't ever say anything straight out.
Right.
It's always in code.
Yeah.
Everything he says is always in code, and even when he does say it sort of straight out, it's still in code.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Riddler is my favorite villain. I've got a...
Yeah.
There's my little shrine to the Riddler is over there. It's not yet done. I'm still unpacking boxes.
Yeah. But yeah, just thinking about some of the lines he said, that it's very much, you know what he's trying to say. He's trying to insult this person, that person, but it's never straightforward. It's always, just around the corner sort of a thing.
The only time that he gets pissy is at the very end of the play, when he tells John Addams to get off his high horse and quit acting like a damn fishwife or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And that's the only time where he gets pissy. He gets damn serious. Every time else, he's kind of said tongue in cheek or with a joke.
Right, very much.
But yeah, he gets real pissed at John Addams and chews him out for like 2 sentences, and then he goes back to being Ben Franklin.
So what are your favorite attributes of a good director?
Someone who will let you be part of the creative process. Okay. I am, and I try to get that with my kids too, because those kids do not work their creative muscles or don't know how to work those creative muscles. And when I was teaching creative writing class, I teach the same thing as when I was directing a show. It was, where do I stop and where do you begin as creating this character? Because that's part of the thing. The creativity, the creative process is what makes acting worthwhile to me, because you're creating something, and instead of using your hands to create a painting or your voice to create music, you are using your body to tell a story. Mm-hmm. And I'm a sucker for a good story. And so I tell the kids at the beginning, this is the story. And I tell the story of the show. And I said, now you're playing one part in that story. And then you need to make sure that you are linked into everyone else. And you're not just a single person coming out on stage, saying their lines and walking off stage, because your parents are going to clap either way. And do you want them to clap because you did a good job, or do you want them to clap because you memorized all your lines? Right. This is not a word memorization fest. This is creating and bringing something to life. And how are you going to bring it to life? So what's your participation going to be?
So this is a two-part questions for both sides of the coin here. What are your biggest pet peeves of directors as an actor? Put yourself in your actor's shoes. What are your biggest pet peeves about directors?
About directors. Maybe directors who are so rigid in their vision that it doesn't allow for the rest of the cast to have their 2 cents. I want you to play him like this. I remember once playing, I was in Sound of Music, and I decided I was going to play Max differently than I had ever seen Max played before, because Max is the easily forgettable character. Mm-hmm. People don't remember Max. They even take his song out of the movie, and they barely remember, oh yeah, there is a character named Max in there. Mm-hmm. He has a bigger role in there, but I decided to play him with a little more flourish. I decided to play him a little more like a toned down Rip Taylor.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm trying
a little more of a confirmed bachelor.
There you go. Nicely.
As we tiptoe around the actual
Yeah. So I did that, and I got the little Hercule Poirot mustache
Uh-huh.
stuff, and someone came up to me after the show and said, "There is nothing in the script that says Max is gay." And I looked at her and I was like, "Oh, because this is someone whose opinion I valued." And I said, "Well, there's nothing in the script that says he isn't." And, it's just a liberty that I took. So beyond that, that's what she said to me. And I was just like, oh, and I was like, I hope she doesn't, hate me or anything, but, director let me get away with it, and
Right.
I had a lot of fun and people remembered the part. And isn't that you don't want to steal
Right.
the thing, but we had some fun with the character. So
Yeah, it's funny because I was in that production with you, and I remember it being a little more. I wouldn't say that it was a little more, effeminate, so to speak. It was very showy, and let's face it, that's what he was. He was a showman. He wanted to produce all these things. He wanted to bring these performers here. You don't very often get a producer that isn't maybe a tad bit showy.
Right.
Whether that you interpret that as gay or not, whatever.
Well, the actor that I cast in my head as I was doing it was Tony Randall. When he played Felix Unger, the very
Yes.
persnickety, fastidious.
Yes.
So.
And straight.
Well, yeah. There's nothing in the script that ever says that he is.
Right.
I had a lot of fun with that show and that mustache.
So then on the flip side, as a director, what are your biggest pet peeves about actors?
Divas. Kids who start, or people that start backstage drama.
Okay.
Because then they come in tears, or there's something going on. You can feel the tension on the set, and you have to pull some kids aside and say, "What's going on?" "Well, so and so said such and such," and starting drama. Or I had, it was in Arsenic and Old Lace, and the girl who was playing the love interest couldn't stand the guy who was playing Mortimer.
Okay.
And then they had to kiss. And after they practiced the kiss, then all of a sudden she's breaking up with her boyfriend and going out with Mortimer, and just it created this whole thing. But yeah, and again, it's teenage drama.
Right.
And you just need to tell the kids, okay, you need to separate this from this. We have to work on this show. And I understand that you're going through some things, but show comes first.
Right.
For
every showman that actually works out, there are 150 that didn't last any more than a couple weeks after the show ended.
Absolutely.
Do you have any, we'll flip the coin again, do you have any pet peeves from actor to actor, or would it be the same?
I would say it's the same. It's
okay.
It's drama. Give me a second. Let me pull the shade.
No problem. Do 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 do.
Well,
okay.
I don't know how to pull the shades in this room.
You're all right. It's okay.
I in the on the Meet the Beatles album, right?
A little bit. If a show was created about you, who do you think would play you?
Oh, wow. A show created about me. Can it be a dead person?
Whoever you think it would. I mean, if somebody was producing an opening Stefan the Benoit musical, in January of 2021, movie, play, whatever you want it to be, who would play you? So obviously it would be somebody alive, but you could give me somebody that's passed.
Wow. Who would I want to play me in a show? Mm, mm. Well, Tom Hanks could play anyone, right? No.
Yeah.
Um, let's see. Gosh, let's come back to that one. I have to put some thought on that one.
You put some thought in it because I have a thought, but I'm going to wait to hear your answer.
Okay.
And we'll see how it works. So, what is or has been your approach to learning your lines?
Well, I've done a couple. When I was first starting out, I was a lousy typist.
Mm-hmm.
And what I would do is I would take my lines and type my lines out. And I was such a bad typer, and this was on typewriters before there were computers, right? By the time I typed out each line 3 or 4 times, it was such a process. By that time, I would have the lines pretty much memorized.
Mm-hmm.
Then repetition is a way to go. When I did 1776, it was great because Chad Ozzie, who played John Addams, had weird hours as well. It was over the summer, so as a teacher, I had that off. And Chad had hours that he could dictate himself because he was a pastor. So we would go to Aurelio's and have lunch and run lines a billion times. And then a friend of mine, Amanda McCoy, would come and run lines with us. And so that was great, especially for some of those lines. They were pretty lengthy.
Right.
And then when I did Much Ado About Nothing, I played the part of Dogberry.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's an insane character, and it's insane in Shakespearean language. So even if you could understand Shakespearean language right like that, you couldn't understand him anyway because he was crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So what I did was I recorded my lines, burned it to a CD, and went for long drives so that I could recite along with the CD until I had everything down. Because that was, I'd say that was probably my most challenging series of lines. And after that, probably Ben Franklin. So yeah, repetition is probably the situation, but just how I repeat it is
they have it must be an app now. It's been mentioned in a couple of the other interviews. I want to say maybe it's called Line Learn or something like that. I completely blanked. And you record your lines.
Mm-hmm. I've seen that, and I haven't been able to work it very well. So
okay,
it's not impossible. I've had other students who have used it, so it's cool.
Good. Do you have any pre-performance rituals?
As a director or as an actor or both?
Either one.
As director, when I'm directing a show, I would always have this pig statue, because the drama club was the Stage Hogs, and that was our pig was Hamlet. He was our mascot.
Mm-hmm.
And so we would put the pig on the wooden part of the stage. The kids would have to line up, and they would all come up and knock the wooden part of the stage 3 times, shake my hand, and then pet the pig's nose. And basically that was my ritual for them so that they could all focus, and so I could make sure that all the kids were where they had to be. That was the last thing they had to do before they took their places. For me, as an actor, it's having a St. Genesius medal, and I got that from two places. I got that from a Batman comic book, and then when Miles Turner said, "Does anyone know who St. Genesius was?" I do, because I had read that Batman comic book, because Joker went under the name Genesius for a couple of issues.
Mm-hmm.
But, so anyway, so yeah, I got my own St. Genesius, and I would carry the St. Genesius with me. But those were my big things. And there was a time where my big ritual was making sure that I chewed cinnamon dentine, just so that I had that cinnamon burn in my mouth, and I felt like I was actually, it was weird. It was something I picked up from John Belushi, who would chew, not John Belushi, John Lennon, who would chew cinnamon dentine while he was on stage singing.
Interesting. So, if you had a magic wand to end all this stuff that's going on with the pandemic, what show would you like to start rehearsals on?
and I get to choose the show.
Yep.
And I direct it or I act it.
Either one. Just what show would you like to start on?
Addams Family.
Okay.
I love the Addams Family. That or Pippin.
Okay.
So, I know I rag you a lot about doing Superman, only because I'm a schlock for B movies. That would be a fun one to do too.
What, in your opinion, makes a good play or a musical?
A good story. I'm always going for the story. There's some things like Cats. It has no story. Or so it's so flimsy that you can't put it together. Although my mom loved it. So we took her to numerous productions of it.
Yeah.
To me, if it doesn't have a good story, it doesn't have anything. So, and that's what I tell the kids is that theater is telling stories. Theater was born out of being able to tell stories of our culture, our faith, or whatever, our history to people who know how to read. So that's kind of the job it is, to make things come alive for people.
Okay. So. Now, you mentioned that, you had for years wished that they would turn the Addams Family into a musical, and they did. Is there a novel or a movie or something that you wish someone would take hold of and turn into a musical, and why?
There's a series of books by Robert Asprin called the Myth Inc. series. And I think it would make a great cartoon / musical. It's a guy who finds there's some Harry Potter, there's some Dungeons and Dragons in there, all stuff. It predates Harry Potter by 15, 20 years easy. But it's a guy who finds out that he's a wizard and he's learning how to use his stuff, and he ends up with this extra dimensional sidekick named Oz, Aahz, no relation, he keeps telling everyone. And he ends up with a friend that's a dragon, and he falls in love with this other wizard that's her name's Bunny, and it's just really, really bizarre things. And as I was watching Harry Potter, I was thinking, man, they've ripped off Harry Potter because they go to this place called the Bazaar at Diva, which is Diagon Alley. So I've always thought that would be a fun show. Oh, I know which one. It's already the music, and someone has tried to put it on stage, but there's this great album by Spocksbeard called Snow. And it's about a kid, if you've ever seen Powder, the movie Powder, it's almost Powder as a musical, but it's never been put on stage. It's just a concept album.
Right.
And that's fantastic. I just love that. I've often imagined what the stage production would look like. And these people did try an experimental theater version of it. And it turned out really well, but I find myself often saying, wow, if I did this, I would change this, or I would bump this part up, or I would do this, or I don't like that at all. But it was fun to look at their production on YouTube, and think, yeah, this would be the way to do it. It's a prog rock album, so I guess it's for certain tastes, but I love the album, and it's a great band. Okay.
Now, you have played a lot of characters that could be labeled as heroes. You've played some that could be maybe labeled as villains.
Yeah, easy.
Which do you prefer, and which is more fun to play?
Villains are easily more fun to play, or characters that have a bit of mystery to them. Like for years, I was Herr Drosselmeyer in Nutcracker Suite Ballet because I didn't have to dance. I got to wear a cape. I got to do magic. So that was a lot of fun, but he always had this sinister look. I had the Wolverine hair and the beard, the gray temples and stuff like that. And that was a lot of fun to do, and he was mysterious. And then I played one in a melodrama. I mean, the typical curly mustache and the black cape and tie the girl up. So those are a lot of fun because you have a lot more leeway. But I don't know that it's villain or hero as much as I like to play wacky ass characters.
Right.
So,
okay.
Actually, well, I did play a villain when I was in Newsies. I played a bad guy.
You technically played a bad guy in Guys and Dolls.
I did, yeah. Guys and Dolls was weird for me because I tried. That was the only time that I ever did a show where I don't have glasses, but I'm going to put in contacts, and I realized contacts are not for me.
Yeah.
So there's times when you and I had scenes together, and one of the contacts came out, and so I'm like, I can only see with one eye. It was a challenge. So,
have there been any big on-stage flubs over the years that maybe at the time weren't funny, but now you look back and you have to laugh?
Oh yeah. I was in a production of The Miser. It was Moliere's show, and I played Harpagon.
Okay.
He was the royal old man, pain in the ass type character. And at that time, I could barely grow a beard. So I grew what I could, but they had to add fake mustache and a longer beard and stuff like that.
Right.
And the person who was designing the set did not talk to the person who was designing the costumes. And we did it in that ancient, I shouldn't say ancient, but that old French Renaissance where the girls wore the hoop skirts.
Mm-hmm.
And they made regular sized doorways, no archways. So all the girls had to come in sideways, lifting their skirts to the upstage, come in, and then plop their dress down and keep going.
Right.
And they got really smooth at it. Well, one time a guy is talking to me, and the whole bit is he's one of these foppish characters where he has like a handkerchief in his pinky ring, and he keeps talking like this. And in the meantime, the comical bit, the slapstick bit, is where he is slapping me in the face with his kerchief. And I'm putting my head back like this and pop, 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 pop. And then he stops talking and he's looking like this. And I'm like, what's going on? Then I see out of the corner of my eye, half the mustache is floating to the ground. And everyone in the audience is just losing it. And so I grab it off the ground and I say, "You've torn out my mustache." And I tried to play it off. And then the daughter walks in, and does her little shimmy through the door, plops down the hoop skirt, comes up to me and says, "Father," and then sees that I have no mustache or half a mustache. And she starts laughing and she runs to the door to leave so she can compose herself and come back in and make her entrance, not remembering that she had to lift her hoop skirt. So her hoop skirt gets caught on the door. The hoop skirt flips up over her head, and everyone sees her nether garments. And it was one of those things where, it couldn't have happened in a better show. And it was one of those comedy of error type things that we were able to play off a little bit towards the end. But I would say that's probably one of the big things. Did the Blues Brothers, and one of the big things about doing the Blues Brothers was me doing the cartwheels, right? And more than one time, I split my drawers doing the cartwheels. So those were some big things.
Okay. What do you think are some of the important lessons that theater teaches people?
Communication skills, for sure. Talking to people and making sure that you're getting your point across. And I'm not just talking speech classes or anything like that. I've got to find a different way because this is a trip. Anyway, communication skills. Teaching kids how to do that. Giving kids confidence. Those are the big two things that I would say get out of this is giving kids confidence to be able to do things in front of other people in public, and learning how to express yourself effectively in a public setting.
Okay. Is there anything within the theater world that you wish you were better
I wish I knew more about set making. I know a handful of tricks. I know a handful of things. I've built sets, but the woodworking aspect, there was a time when I was doing Arsenic and Old Lace, but I needed that staircase. You can't do that show without the staircase.
Right.
So, but the great thing is kids got the word out to their parents, and there was a handful of guys showed up one day when we were working on sets, and they were like, Mr. Benoit, we understand that you need a staircase. How big you want it and where do you want it? We'll build it right now. And sure enough, within 3 hours, I had a staircase that I could run up and down.
Wow.
And so that's one of the great things about not only high school theater, you get the parents involved, but community theater as a whole, because the community comes together. We need this. We need to find this. Do we know how to find this? And eventually we find it, we build it, we make it, or we learn to do without it. We find a way around it.
Right, right. Do you desire to be known for what you do or who you are and why?
Well, I don't know who I am. I'm 58 years old and I still am trying to figure that out from day to day. So I guess being known for what I do, as long as it's, being a teacher and being a free spirit, I guess that would be okay. Being a jerk, maybe not so much. I'm sure a lot of people think I am. But for what I do.
Well, let me get them. They're just in the other room.
Okay.
So let me jump back before we get to our last official question on there. If a show was written about you, who would play you?
Being at a loss, I'm going to say one or two people. Nathan Lane, because he can play anything, and I would want it to be a musical. Or the guy that plays Dwight Schrute on The Office.
Okay.
Maybe him.
Okay.
So, who do you think?
Do you know who Billy Gardell is?
No. Who's that?
He was on that show, Mike and Molly.
Oh, yeah, I can see that.
Hey, guys, stop.
Who's that guy on King of Queens?
Oh, Kevin James.
Yeah, maybe he could do it too.
Yeah, the Gardell is on a show on CBS now called his name loves oh God, what is it called? Abishola, is that the name of it? He's a guy who Bob loves Abishola, which I feel like something you might be interested in, and it's a guy who owns a sock making company.
Okay.
And he has a heart attack, and when he wakes up to a nurse whose name is Abishola, and I believe she's from Nigeria, and he falls in love with her. And it's now anything he can do to woo her. And that's the whole show.
All right.
And it's the whole, I don't think he's ever been married. His friends, his family don't understand. Her family, of course, doesn't understand. And he slowly sort of wins her over. But that one might be one you'd be interested in. So
I guess we might become, maybe your perception of who I am is different than mine. I guess I think I'm just kind of a milquetoast Nevish. The guy who plays, you ever watch Big Bang Theory?
Yeah, I've seen some of it, yeah.
The guy who owns the comic book shop. I think that's kind of how I see myself.
Yeah. So, well, yeah, I think everybody sees themselves different. I see myself as a much nicer person than most people see me.
Uh-huh. See, you could play me.
Hopefully. Yeah, hopefully that'll happen one day.
Shave your head and wear a comic book T-shirt, You could play me.
Absolutely. So the last question, it was a submitted question that didn't quite fall into either director or actor. So this person asks, you've met many stars over the years.
Yeah.
Who was the least like what you expected them to be?
And we'll give you two.
Okay.
William Shatner was very smarmy. He was not what I expected him to be. In
a good or a bad way?
Well, here's the thing. You got to choose your moments. Because I saw him in a hallway at a Trek convention. No one else was in the hallway. It was just me. And I was like, oh, Mr. Shatner, I love Star Trek and stuff. Could I possibly have your autograph? He says, you got $50? I was like, He says, yeah, I didn't think so. And he just kept walking. And I was like, well, wow. And then I realized after being an autograph collector for a while, you got to choose your moments. And that was probably the wrong time, because I met him another time and he was much more warm, but that's what he was there for. Right.
Right.
Kevin Sorbo, the guy who played Hercules, interviewed him, gave us a great interview, but he got very perturbed, not with us and not with our camera crew, but he got a little peeved because in those type of conventions, you wait in line to see the different star or whatever, you pay your money, you spend some time talking to them, you get an autograph, get a picture taken with them, whatever. No one was coming to his booth because the booth next to his was the Mythbusters. And that's when the Mythbusters was the hottest. And they were all there and people were crowding around their booth, and they were blocking off entrance to Kevin Sorbo's booth. And he was getting perturbed to the point of being pissy, not with us, but it was interesting. You could see that his hackles were up.
Yeah.
So that was interesting because we didn't see the Hercules side of Kevin Sorbo. We saw a frustrated Kevin Sorbo.
So I have a question, and I to go on this particular subject, because I think I know the answer to it, but I'm going to ask you anyway.
Sure.
Because you have met so many people over the years and you've scored interviews with them for various things, who was the one celebrity that you were so thrilled that they actually agreed to sort of talk to you, interview, that you were like, you thought it would never happen, and it just happened to work out and you were able to sort of interview them?
So interview. Well, let me just take a step back. The person I was so enamored with, the celebrity I was most enamored with was Adam West.
Okay.
And I almost passed out in front of him. I went to one knee and I definitely got lightheaded. They had to pick me up. So that was pretty embarrassing. I wrote a whole short story on that. But person I was really, let's see, probably Todd McFarlane. He gave me a great interview, and I didn't think I would he was the guest of honor at this convention, went through all the hoops, signed all the papers. And not only did he give me a great interview, but he also, we said, we want to do something a little different. And we had, it was a 2-camera shot. So we'd get a A and B camera. And so as I'm talking to him, I gave him a pad of paper and a pencil and asked him to draw so that we could get him drawing while he was talking to me. And that was kind of my way of getting a piece of artwork from Todd McFarlane as well. He's a comic book writer and creator, and has created Spawn. Yeah. It was a really great interview. And then I did 2 interviews with him, one as myself asking things for one part of the show. And then we also had a bit that we were working on called The Fanboys, where I played this character called Stanley Derflinger, who is like the epitome of the geek character with the glasses, the tape glasses and stuff. And so he played that off as well. And I interviewed as that character as well. And he totally played it off super well as well. It was really cool.
Not who I thought you were going to say.
What do you think I would say?
I thought for sure, I don't know why, I thought you were going to say the one celebrity that you were the most thrilled to get the chance to interview was Margot Kidder.
Margot Kidder was great. I didn't get to interview her, though.
Oh, I thought you got to interview her.
No, I didn't get to interview her. I brought some of my journalism students to the convention.
Okay.
And they interviewed her, but she gave me a little side, how you do and stuff like that. And I got her autograph, my picture taken, stuff with her. But that was an interesting one too, because she didn't hold back. And I had a very nice little girl doing the questions and all that stuff. And Margot Kidder let slide with a handful of 4-letter words and, and stuff like that. And so she was just like, Mr. Benoit, she cussed, and I don't know what to do now. And I was like, that's okay. We will bleep those out, or we'll edit around it and stuff, because it was for a school show. So, but so that was fun. Those are some of my most rewarding moments, is when I get my students those interviews. I had a student interview. He was a huge Boba Fett, Jango Fett, Star Wars type character fan, and so he got to interview the young Boba Fett from the first set of movies, and he was just jacked. He was jacked, and I was just like so thrilled that I was able to set that up for him.
That's pretty awesome. So we will end the interview with this modified version of the questions created by Bernard Pivot. What is your favorite musical?
Pippin.
What is your least favorite musical?
Cats.
I knew it, and it's been so many people's answers. What is your favorite play?
You Can't Take It With You.
Your least favorite play?
Wow. Least favorite play.
This has been a tough one for a lot of people.
I'm going to say Two Gentlemen of Verona.
Okay. All right. What is your favorite word?
Love, puppies, cuddles, snuggles.
What is your least favorite word?
Slather. I hate the word that it's. I just hate the way it's. Dina said her least favorite word was moist. I was like, I've got no problem with moist. It's the word slather. It just comes off the tongue and it just sounds greasy.
Well, what else do you do to barbecue sauce and ribs? I mean,
I eat them.
I've never heard that. That's an interesting one. What sound or noise do you love?
When my dog is lying in the crook of my arm and I'm scratching her belly and she makes nummy noises. It warms me up.
What sound or noise do you hate?
People chewing with their mouth open. My dad had this, it was his mutant ability. If he was an X-Men, this would have been my dad's mutant ability. He could eat a banana, but make it sound like it was a stalk of celery. That's how loudly he chewed. Drove me up a wall. So.
I'm going to guess he's probably not in the fighting core of the X-Men, but yes. What profession, and will count acting and any profession that you have had in your life so far, what profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
One that I've had in the past?
No, not one that nothing that you've done before. Because I know you've had a lot of various jobs over the years beyond just teaching.
Librarian, bookstore owner, or owning an independent movie theater where I could play whatever I wanted I would have my own independent movie theater, and there's one for sale here in Champaign. Retirement job.
I could see the book. I could see the book owner, the bookshop owner. I could totally see it. What profession would you not like to do?
Anything in the medical profession. I was going to school at one time to become an EMT, and I realized I didn't have the stomach for it.
Okay.
So,
if an afterlife exists, what would you like to hear when you get to that place?
here's your Easy Boy recliner. The popcorn's over there. The soda's over there. Knock yourself out.
All right. Thank you very much for joining me this week. Everyone that has watched again, thank you very much for watching. We'll come back again next week with another episode. Everybody stay safe out there.
Take care, guys. Thank you. Thanks, Tyler.